Let me tell you about the Higher Self Expo July 2021. It's a 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. Today's guest is a guest speaker at this event. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com. Hey everyone, it's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology. I've got a Feel Good conversation with you, which I've already had, and I'm just introducing it to you now. This is a chat that I had only an hour ago, and I'm still in the sort of aftermath of it. I'm still sort of bathing in the lightness of it, because trust me, this was quite a giggly affair, I have to say. If you're the sort of person that likes to get their fingers and their feet in the soil and really feel it crumbling or smell the soil, you know, if you love your soil and plants and the animals and connecting with nature, then this is a feel good conversation for you, because I'm actually speaking to a top permaculturalist, completely recognized, somebody who spends half of his year traveling to different projects. So, and I'm reading this from his website, from urban and rural plotting in the north and south of Europe to the arid landscapes of Egypt and Turkey, and lately on a big scale in the tropical jungles of Peru and Brazil. He has a deep pleasure in sharing knowledge with tribal Quechua and Shipibo indigenous communities. I may well have pronounced that wrong, so forgive me if that's the case. So he's been working with the communities in the Andes and the Amazon jungle as well. So I've already had this wonderful chat, and during this talk, we were talking about how permaculture has come on since the days of its origination 40 years ago with Bill Mollison, how our guest is adding to the vast wealth of knowledge about permaculture and sort of updating it. That's why his business is called New School Permaculture. And we're also looking at how permaculture and permacultural thinking impacts every other part of our lives. So we've been talking about the phenomenon of the pandemic that we've all been, or most of us have been subjected to over this last couple of years. We've also been talking about social permaculture, how permacultural thinking can come into healthcare, education, community development, science. It really touches on everything. And so this has been, like I said, a very joyous event. So I'm going to introduce you now to my guest. But let me just finish off and tell you a couple of bits about him, some extra bits. So he's been learning and working with recognized permaculturists like the co-creator of permaculture, Bill Mollison. So he studied with him and also worked with the likes of Jeff Lawton and Doug Bullock, Rosemary Morrow, Darren Doherty, and Sepp Holzer. And he's worked in some of the major world climatic regions. In this process, he's been researching and implementing sustainability principles in a wide variety of environments. In fact, as you go through this talk later, you will, or in a moment, you'll hear actually that he makes an announcement at some point and says, I'm completely sustainable on fish now. So, you know, he has been working with the systems in his own home to make them sustainable. And he's not just rushed and bought all the latest technology to get it done. He's been working naturally to achieve this over time. So my guest today is Helder Valente, who is the creator, I believe, of New School Permaculture. You can check out his website. It's www.newschoolpermaculture.courses. So anyway, let's bring on Helder now. I hope you enjoy this, because I certainly did. Okay, so it's my absolute pleasure to bring on Helder today. Helder, how are you?
Feeling great.
That's good. I'm so honored that you've managed to find some time away from your work to sit with me and let me, you know, ask you lots of questions about your approach in your work as a consultant and teacher of permaculture. It's something that I absolutely love. I've read a little bit about it. I'm not an expert at all, but there's something that just feels like it's right action, you know. Permaculture is like doing things in the right way. So can you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
Well, I'm Helder Valente, and I've been teaching permaculture for about 10 years. I had great pleasure of being a student of Bill Mollison, and
Really? That's incredible.
Yeah, and some other pioneers of the permaculture movement,
Hmm.
Jeff Lawton, Sepp Holzer, Ernst Gotch, many of them. Because when I started with permaculture, I got really passionate about it, and as you say, it was something that made so much sense to me
Hmm.
that I wanted to have it in my life always.
Wow.
So I decided to go and learn with the pioneers of the movement to get that influence in my vision and my work. So
Wow.
Bill Mollison was one of them, maybe the main one.
Yeah, I mean, he's a name that anyone that's looked at permaculture, like that's a name that everyone will know. And
Yeah.
I'm on Jeff Lawton's email list. I think I get things from him quite regularly. But what how long ago was that? Did you say 10 years ago or
Yes.
10 years ago? And what had you been doing up until that point?
Well, my plan was to get this the fundament, the base of permaculture from
Mhm.
these pioneers, and then to give it a new approach. That's why my school and the work that I do, I call it New School Permaculture,
Ah, yeah,
because permaculture was created 40 years ago, and
yeah,
in these 40 years there was a lot of development and a lot of new things that were discovered. So I called it New School Permaculture because it makes me be updated. I always try to be on the front line of permaculture research,
yeah.
and this name kind of makes me move towards that direction, and it's my umbrella in many ways.
Wow. I mean, that's a fantastic focus, you know, to kind of update it and keep it moving with the times. What are the key differences then? What have you learnt through like taking a permacultural approach to the original learning? What have you learnt? And what are you practicing now that's different?
Well, some things are kind of radically different,
Hmm.
and some things are still very fundamental the same.
Uh-huh.
So the nature connection and nature understanding, it's still the same. The thing that has changed the most is related with social dynamics.
Uh,
As permaculture matured, we've been realizing that there's this area of research that we really need to go deeper, and it's about the social interaction.
wow. Okay. So can you talk a bit about that for me, please?
So in the beginning, permaculture started as permanent agriculture.
Hmm.
So agriculture was the base for self-sufficient human settlements.
Yeah.
But then they realized that the food production and the agriculture was just a part of it. We
Yeah.
needed to go much deeper into other sciences.
What, like
So
economies and things like that?
like economy is social, it's a good example. Politics is social.
Medicine?
Management is social. Medicine, decision making, conflict resolution.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Yes. So and it's all related with project management. Permaculture people, they always have dreams, they always have projects, they want to change their life, have a dream life, but
Mm,
then they realize that they have to manage a project, and not many of them ever did that. They have no experience, or even if they have experience, they haven't practiced on the permaculture context with permaculture people, and the dynamics are a bit different.
mm.
So we've been doing a lot of study in that direction. And I teach a course that is 5 days just focused on social permaculture.
Wow. And who goes on your course? Is it people that have already done sort of like their first step in permaculture? You know, do they then move on to the social permaculture course?
Well, the first step is whenever we have to explain to another person what permaculture is. That's when we become permaculture students and we become permaculture teachers. By the first moment, we have to explain what it is.
Yeah.
And then there is this little bug that makes people curious. Somehow they feel this call for permaculture. They want to know more, and then they come to my courses. I
Yes.
don't expect any preparation from people before any training. Um, my training is focused on everything the person might need. And I've also been trained on education. I'm a teacher trainer. I do teacher training for permaculture teachers also. And it's a lot about how we communicate. In education, we bring the permaculture principles, which are our guidelines, and we apply it in education. And we can apply it in project management, we can apply it in compost making, we can apply the principles on everything in life.
Yeah. Relationships and family.
Yeah, yes. So that's permaculture is a way of thinking. And
Yes.
this way of thinking, we can apply it in everything in life.
Mm.
That's why permaculture touches people so deep.
Mm.
And that's why it's so important to create this change of perspective of people,
Yeah.
which is a lot about moving from competition, which is kind of the system we live in, to moving to more cooperation.
Mm.
And this is one of the principles of nature.
Mm.
Move from competition to cooperation. In nature, everything is interconnected, interrelated, and there's no waste.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And in my own life, actually, as a mum and wife, I've got 3 children, and we live. We've got chickens. They're not with us at the moment. We've just moved house, but normally, all of our waste goes to the chickens or it gets composted, and it all gets fed back in. It's always moving. The material is moving from our house into our garden, into a different part of our garden, is feeding and nourishing a different part of our world, and it comes back to us in a kind of closed loop. And it's not always the same loop, but it works.
Yeah, and it's a principle that is related with attitude. So
Yeah,
it's to create an attitude of moving from problems to solutions.
yeah,
And that changes our way of thinking and changes our personality and changes our attitude. And when we change attitude, we change the culture around us. So in
yes,
the beginning, permaculture was permanent agriculture, but that was not enough. So then it moved to become permanent culture.
yes.
So
Permanent culture.
it's a culture that lives in balance with its environment. And to
Yeah,
create a new culture, we have to change attitude. And that's the spark of permaculture. Permaculture touches you and is
yeah.
going to change your attitude in little things.
Mm.
And then
And
slowly it builds up.
yes, and that's the magical thing, isn't it? Because as you get better at it, you get a surplus of stuff, don't you? Like we had eggs that we could share. Where we've moved to, we're living. We've got an orchard where we live, and this morning someone went into the garden and came back full of fruit, and there's no way we can eat it all. So some of it
Yeah,
can get preserved, some of it can get baked into pies, made into jams, and also shared.
yeah. We
It,
also have a principle of self-regulate and accept feedback.
uh,
So nature is giving you feedback of abundance,
yes.
um, and now you have to design for that abundance that you're generating also.
Mm. So
So it's about flows of energy. Even eggs or fruits.
yes,
How is this? How are these things flowing
yeah,
between different elements?
yes. In fact, what you said about the flows of energy and stuff, that reminded me of breastfeeding, because I'm
Mm,
breastfeeding our youngest child at the moment, and I think the nipples. Um, are receiving information from the saliva of my baby and adapting my formula for him. And
Yes.
that will also adapt, inform what I want to eat as well. So you're right, this is an information sharing exercise, isn't it? It's about the flow of energy and being open to hearing.
Yes. So the focus of permaculture is to create clean energy, clean
Clean
flows of
energy.
energy. In terms, in terms, well, there is one thing. The more you know about permaculture, the more challenging it might become. And one example of that, which is a sad example, is that most toxins in the human body accumulate in milking glands.
Oh, really?
So there's a reason why there is so much breast cancer and prostate cancer is
Yeah.
because of that.
Right.
So, permaculture also gives us a lot of responsibility. The more we understand it, the more responsibility we are carrying. And the ecological movement is the movement most exposed to burnout because we realize the world is in really bad shape
Yeah.
and that these energy flows are not clean. There's a lot of pollution in there, a lot of waste in many different ways, even toxicity in the human body, toxicity in the environment. And we try to move away from that and to regenerate. Permaculture is a regenerative movement, and that's something very special about it also.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're talking about there, the sort of like clean energy exchange, and also how it impacts us just outside of our gardens, that there's a political and social context. What I'd like to ask you about is the concept of edges, because I remember when I was reading probably the book that everyone has read, the big Bill Mollison one. I remember reading, and I might not get all the words right or in the right order, but my understanding is that where the edges of one thing and another meet, that's where all the excitement is. That's where the learning, the evolution, the growth occurs. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yes. So nature creates abundance on edges, and
Right.
even when you look at it from a scientific perspective, it breaks everything because it breaks the mathematic. I'll give you an example.
Please
If you
do.
have a forest,
Hmm.
and in this forest there are 20 different types of plants growing in this forest, and next to this forest there is a grassland, and this grassland also has 20 different plants growing in there. But in these two environments, when they meet, you have, in theory, the sum of the two. So
Right.
that means 40 different plants. So right there, you start to understand the abundance of edge.
Yes.
It multiplies the diversity.
Hmm.
Something that makes it very magical and hard to understand is that in that meeting point, there are some plants that only grow in that edge. So in the area between the forest and the grassland, there are, let's say, 5 plants that just grow there. So
Wow.
it's not just 40, it's 45.
Yes.
So it multiplies, it breaks down the mathematics because new things come out of nowhere, or it looks like it's out of nowhere. It's out of microclimate. But nature works that way in terms of creating abundance. And then we get this concept and we apply it to everything we do with the design approach. Permaculture is about design, nature-based design, and edges is a fundamental part of it.
Mm.
And even that concept, you can apply it to social.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you live in the city, you have the city center,
Yeah.
and then you have the countryside.
Mm.
So these are two different environments.
Very different. Yeah.
And then in the between, in the edge, you have the suburbs. And
Yeah.
in the suburbs usually is where a lot of immigrants live.
Hmm.
You get the Pakistani restaurants and the Indian restaurants and the Chinese. And so in terms of culture and diversity, it's also on the edge.
Yeah.
So this is edges applied in social. You also have time edges,
Hmm.
like you had the Industrial Revolution. That was an edge. It was big change in human evolution,
Yeah.
and it was the meeting between rural lifestyle with more of an industrial way of living,
Hmm.
and that made big change. Even what we are living now with this situation, very special situation we're living, it's also an edge in time. It's a
Yes.
time of great opportunities.
Mm.
It's a time of a lot of entropy, a lot of energy without order,
Mhm.
and some things will collapse, things need to change.
Mm.
We need to put more attention into climate change and all this, but it's a turning point, and that's what edges are about, are energy that concentrates.
Yes. And then presumably the structures that are trying to maintain themselves during this time are going to have to work harder and harder and harder to be able to keep the same and not change during these
Yeah,
times. Is that
something we also learn in nature is about patterns and flows, how energy flows, and nature is very powerful, and humans can slow it down in a way, but they cannot stop it.
yeah.
So and permaculture is about, it's kind of surfing nature, going with the natural flow and interacting with that, but without imposing or putting obstacles, just moving together. And
Yes.
I think that's the big change that the world needs to see. It's to evolve together with nature,
Mhm.
instead of living in this superiority complex that we can control nature and exploit all of the resources. It's
Yeah.
insane.
So we can we bring the edge closer to us?
Yes, edges are everywhere.
Mm.
Even in our thoughts, like sometimes people ask me, "Hey, Elder, what is not permaculture? You
Mm.
know, what is the limit?" And the limit is, for example, someone that is racist or
Yeah.
uh, or doesn't accept other cultures. Permaculture is about diversity. It's not about monoculture. That's a monoculture in the mind,
Yes.
to only accept one culture or to valorize one culture more than others.
Mm.
So that's an example of edge in the mind, in the way we think.
Mm.
Nature is diverse. There's all different types of plants, all different types of animals. They all coexist,
Yeah.
and we have to adopt that to our way of living.
Yeah. Yes, it's very
Sounds
beautiful.
simple, huh?
Um, I don't remember being taught about permaculture when I was at school, because, for me, when I was at school, school was a monoculture. you
It
know, the,
is.
the whole effect of being educated, it's you're being done to, you're being told what to do and how to fit into this little box. Um,
Yes.
and it didn't really create much flexibility or creativity.
No.
It just
So,
created more resistance in me, in fact.
yes, I live the same. Like I had a lot of problems, for example, with chemistry. I was terrible in chemistry. And nowadays, I'm so passionate about chemistry. I love it. It's
Mm,
just because I found a different way to look at it.
yes.
And the way I was learning at school, being imposed, and I didn't find any context for the need for it. It just didn't make sense. And I just created resistance to it. And nowadays, it totally changed my perspective. And if you look at schools and the education system that we have generally in the world, is very much focused on the left side of the brain.
Yes.
So it's focused on analytical thinking.
Mm.
It's very much focused on mathematics and engineers, architects. But if you look at artists, so more of the right side of the brain,
Yeah.
they don't have as much space to, expand at school,
Yeah.
because there's also, it's very much based on competition, people trying to get the highest ranking and be recognized by that, and create models around that, and people being devalorized because they cannot achieve these targets, simply because their learning style is different, the
Yeah.
way they perceive the world is different. And that's where the monoculture of education comes from, and
Mm.
there's no future in that also.
Yeah. Yes. And it's interesting because right now, sort of politically and holistic, well, not holistically, but sort of medicinally, like, when we're looking at health and stuff, there's a big monoculturing going on right now in the idea that everybody must be treated with, a vaccine, and everything is about separation and masks and things like that. And not much, well, if anything, I've not heard anything on the news about how the immune system is our actual system to stay well, and that we can do things to improve our outcomes and work with nature. Where does,
Yes.
like, from a permaculture perspective, like, what happens when we resist nature? What happens to our bodies? What happens to our societies when we allow the monoculturing to take over?
Um, so, the more we look at nature, the more we understand that we cannot go against it.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of medicine, um, and that's what I'm focused a lot on lately, and that's where chemistry comes into
Yeah.
place,
Yeah.
which is about the nutrition of food that we are getting,
Yes.
and the result in terms of nutrients of this industrial agriculture.
Mm.
And the root of all problems is the industries:
Yeah.
education industry, food industry, health industry. So we have a society that is regulated,
Mm.
and the dynamics are all around the needs of this industry.
Yes.
And that's the paradigm that we live in.
Mm.
But when we look at nature, and when we look at soil fertility, we realize that in average, the food that we eat is 3 times less nutritious than
Yeah.
what it used to be. And the
That's
further
incredible,
the
isn't it?
further back you go in time, the more you realize that people were eating really good food.
Yeah.
So my chemistry focus now is very much related on how to get the full potential of plant nutrition.
Yeah.
In other words, how to make a plant the most happy possible, so that we have the most beneficial relationship with it.
Yes.
So now we have technologies in which we can measure the quality of the blood of a plant, the sap.
Wow. How does that work? Tell me, how does that work?
Well, one thing that is not new is that the most similar thing to hemoglobin, so
Yep.
human blood, is chlorophyll.
Of course.
It's the
Yeah.
blood of a plant.
Yeah.
So the molecule, only the center of the molecule changes. One is iron, and the other one is magnesium. So it's the most similar.
Mhm.
It's interesting because very, very rich people, what they do is they get blood transfusions very frequently,
Mm.
and they get blood from a very young person, 16, 18 years old. It costs about 3,000 euros, and they can do that
Yeah.
every 3 months. And then they stay young and healthy for a very long time.
Mm.
But the poor people don't have access to that.
Yeah.
So what poor people have access is to wheatgrass, which is the most rich plant in terms of chlorophyll. It's 70% chlorophyll. We just have to juice it because there's too much fiber on it. We cannot
Yeah.
digest that because we're not cows, we're humans. But the drink, the green smoothies, I don't know if you,
Yeah.
green shots,
Yeah.
wheat grass shots. So that's the most healthy thing that you can take. Of course, if you eat greens every day, you're eating chlorophyll every day.
Yeah.
One thing that we are realizing is that general vegetables that you buy in the supermarket have about 6% sugars or 6% concentration of chemical elements on it.
Mhm.
But our focus in permaculture now, we realize that we can take it to 20%. So if you eat something that it's 60% nutritious and thinking that it could be 20, it has a huge impact on your health and everything you do.
Mm.
So I've been working with organic agriculture, biodynamic agriculture, big wine farms, um, and they've been into organics for many years and they've been doing things correctly for many years. But then I go there and I measure it and I see that it's just 80%, and I know that the potential could be 20.
Yeah.
So there's a big gap, and there's a lot of work that we need to do, because even in organic agriculture and then many other forms of agriculture, they need to be updated. They
Yeah.
need to be more on the front line of what is land regeneration and soil fertility
Yeah.
and plant nutrition.
Yeah.
Because if you're making wine and you want to be making really high quality wine, you really have to put your soil in shape,
Yeah.
because that's going to improve the flavors.
Mm.
It's not just the nutrition, it's also the flavors, the aromas, everything changes.
Yeah.
So we have to bring back that nutritious food that we have in the past, to make people more healthy,
Yeah.
more resistant to diseases, virus, cancers,
Mhm.
all that. And let's hope that people don't create an industry around nutritious, super nutritious food, and we end up moving from industry to industry.
Yeah.
But at least we will have people that are properly nourished, and
Yeah.
that's a huge problem that soil researchers are realizing. Nobody was expecting for the soil to be this bad, and it is.
So, what I'm hearing from you then, Helder, is that um, what's happening to the vegetables is also happening to the humans. So, for instance,
Yeah.
if the soil the vegetables are in is poor, then the soil, or like the energy or the grounding that we as humans have, is also poor. Um,
Yes.
it looks very much like it's an environmental thing, getting the environment right. Because if you get the environment right, then nothing can, like your field. Sorry, yesterday I was interviewing a homeopath, and then I interviewed someone that does biofield tuning, talking about the field. And I was also talking to somebody else. I can't remember what else about, but for instance, one of my favorite books at the moment is What Really Makes You Ill. Everything you thought about disease is wrong. And I think it's talking about the environment, getting the environment right. I love what you say there. I realized while you were talking about the level of food and the nutrition in the food, that there's another edge, the edge of food as it goes into the mouth and interacts with the human or the
Yes.
animal it's feeding or the bird, because there is something magical that goes on as well. Because I think the energy of the human, the recipient, and the energy of the thing that we're eating and consuming, I think they can work together in a symbiosis. There is something that is created by the relationship between the food and the person. Would you
Yeah.
do you feel that as well?
Well, there is more and more scientific research around that and evidence.
Mm.
Um, when you look at what makes us ill, I got curious about your book. The things that makes us ill. Well, a part of it is about nutrition, right?
Yeah.
You know, if we don't get proper food, if we just eat processed food, we're going to get sick much more easily.
Yeah.
And another part of it is our mental state.
Yeah. Because that is a food in its own right, isn't it? Like we're feeding our mind and our
Yes. So maybe you have you eat the best food in the world, but if you are a person that have a lot of anger inside of you, a lot of anxiety, you might develop diseases even eating the best food in the world. So your mental state is fundamental part of it also.
yeah.
But then things get really interesting when you eat the right food, like let's say diverse food, diverse. And especially vegetable based because of the chlorophyll aspect that we talked about. But there is a vitamin, the vitamin B3, thiamine,
Yep.
and it's the vitamin of happiness.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yes. So some people they are working on depression using high doses of vitamin B3. So if you have abundance of vitamin B3 circling in your body, uh, you're more easily are going to be relaxed and not go as easy into anxiety states or depression. So there's a direct relationship between the two things. How our state of mind is directly related with the food that we eat.
Yes.
There's no separation. Nowadays, people eat a lot of sugar, they drink a lot of soda, a lot of sugar, and that stimulates process of anxiety and everything in the body that gets stimulated, coffee and lifestyle and all that. Um, but in the end, in my opinion, all goes back into the connection that we have with the food we eat and with the environment that we live in and the attitude,
Yeah.
how we relate to things.
Yes. Yes, definitely. In fact, when I have a problem, I often sort of ask, what would nature do? You know, I'll look at different plants and think, how would this plant deal with it? I mean, you can use lots of different things for problem solving. I heard of people using the telephone directory for problem solving. Like they flick through it and they see a business and they say, how would this business resolve this issue? You know, like an undertaker or a restaurant. How would a restaurant solve this this problem? But
Wow.
you can kind of I use nature to answer my questions. And I was considering, I really like fermenting, so I really like beer and kombucha and stuff. And in fact, when you were talking about thiamine, B3, I used to get a flush on my face when I drank lots, but I felt high as a kite. I felt like I wasn't drunk, but I felt very, very happy. And I think a particular strain of what I was brewing must have been quite high in it. But where was I? I've lost my train of thought. But oh yes, I love looking at bacteria and how if you treat a SCOBY right, you know, like with a kombucha, if you give it the right environment, it can live forever. It can outlive humans. It can live longer than recorded history if you treat it right. Same with sourdough. If you, it's a living organism that's going to keep on growing if you feed it right. And so when I was thinking about money and scarcity, I just realized, you know, I was looking at nature and I was looking at annual plants. There's no scarcity. A plant grows and it has enough to reproduce itself 100 times over, 1,000 times over. And then when you look at a tree, if it's in the right environment, it could recreate itself in so many different ways. And when I look at nature, I don't see scarcity.
No.
I don't think nature is designed for scarcity, is it? It's designed for abundance.
Yes.
And
And
so when I look at the real world, I say the real world, which is actually the fake world, the manufactured, monocultured world. When I look at that, I think, wow, they've really created this idea that things are scarce and resource, but they've actually controlled the environment to ensure that things are scarce. Whereas when you look in nature, walk around, it's there for you.
yes, Yeah, in nature there's abundance everywhere, and I think the role of the human being is to stimulate even more this abundance,
Yeah,
through regeneration and direct connection with nature. But we need to share the surplus. We
yeah,
need to share this abundance. If it just gets accumulated in the hands of few, then
yeah.
there will be many that will not have access to it, and that's the paradigm change that we need to create.
Mm.
And it's really interesting that you're working with the fermentations. um, I think that's the key. And if you want to really learn about what nature is and how nature works, I think everybody should start with that, with fermentations.
Mm.
And at the same time, you're producing probiotics, which are one
Yeah.
of the best things that you can take. um, One new concept that I'm thinking about is that, when you look at nature, nature is like a giant Scooby.
Yes,
All
it
the all the soil is like thousands of different Scoobies connected,
Yes.
and even in the leaf of plants, there's all this diversity of bacteria and yeasts and fungi, all living together and eating each other in balance.
Mm.
And even our skin, even the human body, it's
Our
like,
whole body is like that, isn't it?
there's bacteria everywhere.
Mm.
And that's what life is, really. We look at each other and we see flesh and bones, but actually we're not. We are just covered on this melting pot of microorganisms, and
Yeah.
it's all around us everywhere in the planet. The problem is their population is going down. They are dying very, very fast in soils, in the air, in everywhere. So the big change that we need to do is to increase bacteria population and fungi and microorganisms in all environments where we are. And that's exactly what you do in your little bottle with your Scooby. You give it food, it grows, you take care of it, you have a relationship with it
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can also get quite metaphysical. You can tell her about your problems and she will listen to you.
Now that probably could be a science, actually. There probably is somebody who delivers a course on how to talk with your SCOBY,
Yes, yes.
healing via the
Yes.
SCOBY coach or something. Who knows?
Leave your psychologist and just focus on talking to your Scooby.
I'm gonna have to post a link or a picture of a SCOBY for people that don't know what they are, because people will be thinking, "What are they talking about?"
Yes. So the cultivation of this microorganisms like
Yeah,
kombucha or apple cider vinegar, we could
yeah, I
say
make that too.
vinegar. Everybody knows vinegar. It's a great medicine for people. It's a great medicine for plants.
Is
So
it?
yeah, so one of the things that in my study I naturally realized is that the same thing that is medicine for humans, it's also medicine for plants.
Well, of course. Like, I mean, I didn't know that before, but now you say it, of course that's true. Like my daughter a couple of days ago was asking, Mum, I want some juice. And I said, why do you want juice? I just want some juice. I just don't like the taste of water. And I said to her, darling, you better get used to the taste of water. What do what do plants, animals, the earth, and people all have in common? She was, I have no idea. I said, we all need water. That's one thing we all need. Of course, you're right. So how do you use vinegar to feed your plants?
Vinegar is kind of like a solvent. It
Uh-huh.
helps things dissolve and it extracts nutrients and elements from other things,
Yeah.
and that way it becomes available for the plants. So it breaks down molecules, it makes things available. And
Wow.
the same thing for humans.
Yeah.
Nowadays on my courses, I make pineapple vinegar, I make cherry vinegar, I make honey vinegar, and For me, it's really important. People come to the course and they think they're going to learn, how to make gardens. They also learn how to make gardens. But, before learning how to make gardens, they learn how to make vinegar.
Mm.
Because in many ways, vinegar is more fundamental than, making a garden, because the vinegar is the life.
Yeah.
And we can make a garden and have little life, few life on it.
Mm.
But if you know how to reproduce life, when you make a garden, it's going to be amazing. When you make a forest, it's going to be amazing. When you take that medicine, it's going to be amazing for you. So it's
Yes.
the cultivation of the life. For me, that's more important. And it's the pattern. In permaculture, we say design from pattern to details. To learn how to grow lettuce, that's a detail. But
Mhm.
to know how to grow life, that's the pattern that goes
Yes.
everywhere. Lettuce just goes in the garden.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And listen to all the birds in your back garden or in your project. Like, where are you? So right now we're recording. We're both in Portugal. I'm near Caldas de Rainha, and you're near the Douro.
I'm in the Douro Valley, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in
So
the north of
you're north of
Portugal.
me. And what do you? Is this where you live or where you work? Where you're recording from right now?
So I kind of live here off of the year, and the rest of the year I'm traveling. I teach internationally also. I visit many different projects. I do courses my own also as a student to upgrade my skills.
Yeah.
And here, I've been designing this place for more or less 10 years,
Wow.
and now it got to a state of balance. So my intervention here is very little,
Hmm.
mostly harvesting, some tweaking a little bit, but there isn't that much. It got to a state of balance. So I don't have to be here all the time.
Mm.
Now it's the harvesting season, so there's blueberries, there's peaches, there's strawberries, there's just fruit and food everywhere. So and it will also works kind of as a retreat. Is where I come to kind of stop the mind, stop the brain, and just try to connect with nature and learn new things from it. Simple things. And then what I learn here, I transport it to other places, and I transport it to the courses that I do, and I share it with the students.
Wow.
Yeah. This year, I became self-sufficient on fish. I have trouts here,
Wow.
and became self-sufficient on trouts for family scale.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really remarkable. I feel really inspired. I want to get all my books out again. I love the sound of the birds in the background because one of my favorite books, actually, I don't know if it's behind me. It's called The Secrets of the Soil,
Mm-hmm.
and it's older than me, I think. It's like older than 40 or something. And in it there's this chapter talking about how plants grow better when there's the sound of birds near them. There's this whole chapter sort of dedicated talking about the effects of when there's the sounds of nature near the things that are growing, and that things grow more vigorously, they fruit more, just because of the sound or the energy. I don't know, but I'm hearing those birds is really making me think, oh,
Yeah.
this
Here, here I also put a special focus on wildlife habitat.
yeah.
So I built bat houses,
Oh, wow.
bird houses, and bee houses. So to trying to bring that diversity and that wildlife back, and
Mhm.
to make it feel comfortable in the human presence.
Wow.
Because when you go to really pure place with where humans don't go very often, the animals are curious. They come close to you. They come to check who you are, and they are not afraid. They don't have fear. They don't feel danger or anything like that. Um, so permaculture also focuses a lot on that. The living in harmony with your environment and multiplying this life. And animals are and insects are a big part of it. It's not just the amazing vegetable gardens, and it's not just food forests. It's much more than that. It's the whole system. It's everything together, and that's when all the magic happens. You know, when you realize that you are in the middle of this. Some people call it orchestra. I prefer to call it jazz band. It's like a jazz band, you know. Everybody has a space to improvise and be present, and it's all very harmonious without having to be like an orchestra. And that's how I design things.
And are people able to visit where you've created? And
Uh, yes. um, it works. It's a bit more like a sanctuary, and the retreat is not like I receive people every day. I'm preparing another place for that.
yeah,
This here works a lot like my personal laboratory.
yeah,
It's where I make the new experiments, and then from here I take it to other places. I'm preparing a new place to be more open to the people to come and visit, where you know, people can come. I will explain to people what's going on, and I'll be able to receive bigger groups. The idea is to make a agro botanical garden,
wow.
so a place where people go and they have this, you know, very different fruits and plants they never seen before, like black persimmons and green
Mm.
peaches and giant blueberries and red blueberries. So for the past years, I've been collecting all this special funky fruits, old fruits, and now I got to a point I can start to reproduce them, and I'm preparing a botanical garden of plants that people can actually eat and fruits that people are actually eating. So that's the
Wow.
idea.
So we're actually changing the face of agriculture. Like, you know, well, not agriculture, but like gardens, you know, like people could actually start growing your trees in their garden.
Yeah, I think it's a lot. It's a lot about passion. I think one of the biggest problems of the world we're facing is that people are losing their passion.
Mm.
People are away from what they are gifted, you know, and people are sacrificing their life to have a sort of stable life, you know, to have this comfortable things, and then they end up dependent on having a bigger car every year, or having this or that, so that they feel comfortable and recognized. But actually they are not happy because they are far away from their dream and their passion,
Yeah,
and their passion is just a hobby sometimes. But you know, most of their time they are just doing something that they don't like, and they are sacrificing their lives to that. So for me, I always look for you know, what are the things that make me happy and make me feel like you know, enjoying life, and then how to transport also to other people. So a lot of people come to my courses, you know, wanting to learn how to grow lettuces, for example, in the balcony. I want to learn how to make a veggie garden in a balcony in New York. Okay, but that's interesting. But what's your passion?
yeah,
You know, and sometimes I realize that the passion of the person is related with gardening, but it's not really gardening. It's cooking.
yeah.
The person never realized that he had a huge passion for cooking, and that was something that make him really feel fulfilled.
Mm.
And you know, they come to the permaculture course wanting to learn about gardening, and they realize what is their passion,
Yeah.
and then they go and they make a restaurant with a veggie garden in the back. And you know, that's what makes me feel like happy and fulfilled, is that you know, I supported this person materializing her dream and their gifts in one place, and that's my goal.
That's a really beautiful passion. It's like you're culturing people.
Yeah, some people call it brainwashing.
I think that's wonderful. I feel like I've had enough of your time now, because I can hear your garden calling you. It feels cruel to keep you away from it. But may I ask you just a couple more questions, Helder?
Yes, yes, no problem.
Okay. You're a guest speaker at the Higher Self Expo, which is coming
Yes.
up on the 17th and 18th of July. Can you tell us a little bit about what you'll be talking about during the Higher Self Expo?
Well, the expo is a lot about how can science meet spirituality.
Yeah.
And well, I consider myself a kind of scientist, kind of researcher. But I also consider that being a researcher of nature often puts you in kind of a spiritual connection with nature also.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to be talking about. How connecting with nature can take us to a higher self, sort of.
Wow.
How to achieve a higher self using nature as a support and inspiration.
Mm.
Mm. So that's the idea. And the permaculture approach. Having nature as a base and as an inspiration for everything we do.
Fantastic. I love that. And if somebody has been listening today, sorry, I'm hearing a bit of an echo. If somebody's listening today and thinking, wow, I would really like to know more and work with you, how can they best get hold of you? What's your preferred route?
Well, I have my website is newschoolpermaculture.courses, and there's email contact in there. I organize all different kind of courses, short courses for like 5 days
Mm.
about social or about water, 5 days about water or soil. I also do the social, 5 days social permaculture. I also do teacher training for people that want to learn about well, mainly communication. For me, teaching is about communication. How do you share your ideas? So
Yeah.
it's not really a course for teachers, it's a course for communicators, for people that want to share their ideas. And then I also do long courses for like 1 month, residential, 8 hours a day, learning every day about how nature works for people that want to go all the way and really understand how it works.
Mm.
So I also work as a consultant. Lately, I've been working a lot on vineyards because they want to get the best wine in the world. They want to know how to do it,
Of
but
course.
their soil is pretty destroyed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I work also as a consultant and as a guest speaker in many conferences, many projects.
I can see why. A fantastic guest. I've got one last question for you, Helder, and that is, if you could leave the audience with just one thought right now, what would it be?
um, Maybe how would you feel if you would be living through your full potential?
Ooh, that's a really great thought to end it on. That's really good to focus people. I'm
Yeah,
going to
was
think
this?
about that
I got
myself.
inspired by this orange here.
Wow.
It's an orange at full potential.
Yes, it is, isn't it? We've got a few of those in our back garden.
Yes, enjoy it. That's medicine.
It really is, isn't it? Well, thank you so much for joining me
Yeah.
today, Helder. I really enjoyed it. I hope we can connect again in the future. But you sound like a really, really busy man. I look forward to like hunting you down sometime and maybe doing one of your courses. I think it's amazing.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh my goodness. What a treat that was to chat with Helder today. Oh my goodness, I absolutely adored his energy. When we were off air, I very cheekily asked if I could go and visit his garden because I absolutely want to, really see the work that he's doing and kind of get to know yeah, like just learn more about, you know, how we can all work together. He's a great guy. There is an after hours bit because our conversation kept going and he actually turned the tables on me. So I'm actually going to do that as a separate video. So watch out for Helder After Hours or something of a similar name. I shall do that as well, because we got a bit like random in that bit of the interview. But anyway, I love that. I hope you did too. Let me know your thoughts. Feel free to share with anyone that you think is absolutely of the mindset of permaculture. You know, somebody who loves doing things naturally, who is looking for the natural way, who is not trying to monoculture everything for starters. Let's see how we can create bigger edges around our life and create new areas of interest. Let's see how we can you know, repurpose things in a way that really fits with nature. Yeah, so anyway, thank you so much as ever for your support. If you want to get hold of Helder, you can reach him. Go to www.newschoolpermaculture.courses. That's his website, and you'll also see his email address below as well. In fact, let me just read it out as well. One second. His email address is newschoolpermies@gmail.com. That's NEWSCHOOL Permies, PERMIES @gmail.com. So that's 2 ways of getting in touch with him. Of course, as ever, if you'd like to stay in contact with me, you can subscribe to this channel, Louisa Tanner Munson, or just drop me an email. It's louisa@feelgoodastrology.com. If you wanted to book some time with me, you can just go to my store, www.feelgoodastrology.com/store. Anyway, until we meet again, take care. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then why not support today's guest at the Higher Self Expo in July 2021? The Higher Self Expo is a worldwide 24-hour event with 33 guest speakers who are all sharing their wisdom and exploring the connection between science and spirituality. To register your place and find out more, go to www.higherselfexpo.com.